Goldberg, Bill Goldberg, calls Vince McMahon a naughty, naughty word. So I'm going to give you the full quote and you tell me. It seems quite tame when I read it out in this sense, but you tell me if Vince deserves this. Vince is like Dana White, Goldberg said. He's the big boss and he makes everything happen. And in all honesty, he gave me the opportunity to put my wife and son on the front row and gave me the ability to perform again in front of them. So this is when he was come back, like in 2017, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I owe him everything until we went to Saudi Arabia. And he asked me to put Roman Reigns over and I had COVID. I remember calling him from my house and said, listen, here is the deal. I'll do it if you give me a retirement match. I did what Vince asked. As a performer, I was 56 years old. As a human being, you're conscious about how you look in a bathing suit. Especially 2 months prior to being in that bathing suit, you couldn't work out because you had COVID. I put myself in a horribly shitty situation to get what I wanted to. It's misprinted, where I wanted to. But to satiate him and give him what he wanted. Problem is, he never held up his end of the bargain. Vince is a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. Well, there you go.
Well, I'm surprised a bit because Bill rarely talks that way. Like when he's speaking publicly about somebody, he's really polite. But I think he puts that in context quite well, right? A guy that's the whole character was based off of body. Suddenly you're putting yourself out there at a point where you probably shouldn't be. But the part about Vince not reciprocating the deal, big shocker. I mean, how many you can just take that segment out and plug that into like 99% of the other interviews that people don't about Vince. My thinking on Vince is like when I saw the stuff from Endeavor, and you and I had spoken the last time we recorded, is I was surprised they cut him loose that quickly. My belief in this, people that I've spoken to, is that everybody's of the belief that something is going to come of this FBI investigation. It's without getting into the politics stuff, the FBI is sort of like way out on the limb over here right now with the public sentiment. And, where the world is and the stuff that we know, like when I found out that, after Vince had allegedly paid the money back, basically stealing from the company and then paying it back, it's good the money's back in the company. That makes the ledger right, but you stole from a publicly traded company, so it's not so easy to wipe that away, allegedly.
Do you think that the FBI, the federal government, is interested in Vince because of the NDAs he signed or because of business impropriety in one way or another?
Part of the NDAs, probably the fact that there's a relationship with a certain other former president, probably all the above. But I think the biggest part is, certainly equaled all of those things, is when he won the case, the steroid trial. If you recall, he comes out on the front steps, takes the neck brace off because he didn't need to put on airs anymore for the court, and then says, quote, "I'm Vincent fucking McMahon." You don't poke the federal government there that way. Like I always tell people, understanding government and teaching it. People come and they have careers and they retire and they move on. So it's not just so easy because if that person is the person that should have gotten you and didn't, they're going to, as this young kid James comes in and say, hey, here's a file I want to keep an eye on, right? And 30 years from now, you're going to pass that file on to somebody. Just take the high road. If you're for the federal government was like 97% of its cases. If you're one of those fortunate 3%, take that as a gimme, as a gift from Santa Claus or somebody upstairs, and take the high road and move on. So I'd say this is probably a little bit of all the NDAs, the stolen money, even though paid back allegedly, the NDAs, and certainly playing into this to some degree somewhere is an FBI that was a little bit butthurt from not winning that case, and Vince rubbing their nose in it. But the people that I'm speaking to are of the school of belief that something will be coming of that.
I'm a big fan of Bill Goldberg. A lot of people watching, or some people really aren't, but horses for courses and that kind of thing. I really, really think a lot of Bill. I've never had the pleasure of talking to him. You've spent a good nearly 2 years in WCW with him. I'm sure you talked to him and wrestled him, in fact, many times. From what you know about Bill, does he take the business too personally? Because he seems to really, even in his late 50s now, something that happens in the wrestling business, it really seems to get him right in the heart, and he has a, he can't, in the sense of, when you say take the high road, I'm not saying take the high road, but he can't ignore it. He has to, he takes it personally.
Bill's a great guy. I have nothing but good things to say about Bill. When I wrestled him one time, and we were in the ring one time together there, he came to me and said, what do you got a couple ideas, and he starts to open up on those ideas, and he stopped himself and he said, I'm sorry, I'm talking to Shane Douglas. He said, I'll listen to you, something along those lines. And so I really respected that. Bill, my take on Bill is two things here I think that need to play in. Bill is very much a hard on sleeve type of guy. He does take things personally. And I think the reason he does is because everything he does is to the umpteenth degree. He wants to be as good at that as he can be. He came into our business quite late. I guess the story goes after Kevin had seen him bouncing somewhere, Kevin Nash. And when you come into those dressing rooms, I don't care how big and tough and physically imposing you are. When you're young in that dressing room, you're very well aware, unless you're delusional, of what you don't know. When you're watching these other guys go out there and have these easy, what seemingly looks really, really easy matches, effortless looking, and so I think he was always trying to live up to that. He'd come from this great football career, and coming into the dressing room where he's really not well versed at all in. I always found Bill to be incredibly respectful, personable, never off-putting or nose in the air type. So I have nothing bad to say about him. The fact that he said that, I think he did, newsflash, promoters lie, and promoters named Vince McMahon lie proficiently. I'm surprised that he's saying it out loud, because it's sort of like we chuckle at it when we hear that, because it's almost quaint, right? That he expected him to live up to it. But yeah, I think that's probably why Bill went public, and he realized, I like how he thanked Vince and said, "Hey, you gave me the opportunity to wrestle in front of my son and my wife." And then lowers the boom, a lot more tactfully than other people I know would do it, right? But yeah, I've got nothing but good things to say about Bill, and I know that a lot of people, fans in our business, have certain opinions, and people in the business have certain opinions. I've never had cause to say anything bad about Bill. I've always found him to be professional, respectful, polite, personable. So it's just sort of funny, like, for me to hear like the Bill that I know. If you'd have told me like what person and gave me a list of 10 names said this, Bill would probably been the last person I picked on that list. But yeah, it's again, it's a little sad epitaph here. The fact that we hear this so often, when I first started going public with stuff like that, people were like, "Oh, you're gonna get your balls cut." I don't care. I've always tried to speak truthfully to stuff. And, for better for look, if you dislike me because I say the truth, then sorry, I don't know what to tell you. In my business, there's far too many guys that come out. "Oh, he's a great guy. What do you call me? He's a fantastic guy. He's a great guy." And then something happens. Then they go, "Oh, there was the famous story about at least infamous in Pittsburgh, Mark Madden, who had been a big Ric Flair fan, right? Nate, call it Nate this, Nate's that." I said, "Look, Mark, I'm not telling you who to have be friends with, whatever. I'm just telling you, he will stab you in the back the first chance he needs to." And, "Oh, no, not Nate, not Nate." Well, then we had that whole falling out, right? It took 30 years, but it came out. Leopards can't change their spots. Zebras don't change their stripes. And it's common. But now, after all these years, you hear this repeatedly from people, right? Both about Flair and now about Vince. And I don't think that's can't all be sour grapes, right? There's this litany, almost routine thing that happens, and then you hear the stories. There might screw might be turned a little different, or that nail might not be there, but it's the same wall built, right? It's the same story over and over again. And I think that speaks volumes.